like there's no perfect metric out there, but I think for me, power is the thing that most reliably and objectively quantifies the stress that we are applying to our bodies. And it correlates the strongest to lactate threshold. So when we're using power over a period of time, it can become a really helpful tool in terms of pacing training intensities, predicting race outcomes. So I can get a pretty good idea of where someone's at in terms of what their half marathon time is going to be or what their marathon time is going to be at their current threshold. Then it's just, can they hold it for that long? Do we just need to train out the duration, or are they falling short of that bar? And do we need to do a threshold block initially to sort of lift that threshold and then push it out to how long they can hold it? So, as I guess I'm more of a remote coach, I sort of coach many sort of through online programming. It's really important for me to have as much data as I can on exactly what stress I'm applying to my athletes to make sure that I'm not overcooking them as well.
It's really interesting. And I imagine power and pace have some sort of relationship. I guess all the metrics have some sort of relationship.
I think power and pace are pretty strongly correlated with flat stuff. So particularly like track and, and flat road marathons, if you're optimally trained for that distance and the time it's going to take you to complete it at that power, then yes, they correlate really well. I think where power comes to the fore for me is it's a really good way to quantify work when things aren't dead straight or when things get windy. And so I think, when you're running over undulating terrain, so again, coming back to, more the ultra style of racing, pace is pretty useless when it comes to running up a hill versus down a hill versus you can practice running over those segments of a course and go, well, it took me this long to do it. So, hopefully on race day, I'll be around there. But it's so easy to overdo it in an ultra. I think for me, power is a really good way to act as a limiter of when I need to stop running up a hill and convert to a power hike, or when I need to stop hiking and pull my finger out and start running again. And it's generally not at the top of the hill, which is where a lot of us will go, oh, I'll just walk to the top. So it helps to sort of, I guess, streamline effort in a way that's still sustainable, and it means you're not wasting sort of dead time or losing opportunity, and you're a lot less likely to really overdo it and put yourself in a hole and then hemorrhage time at the end. The one thing that power still sucks at though is sand running. Completely useless unless you're going to do a specific threshold test on sand and know what your threshold is on sand. But I mean, look, pace is pretty useless on sand too, and so is heart rate. Freaking hurts.
Sand running hurts if it does one thing. So how, this is me being a massive rookie, how do you sort of track power?
So how do you measure it? No, it's a really good question. It's pretty important. So I guess power from a running perspective, it's always going to be algorithm based, whereas from a cycling, so power kind of started more in the cycling sphere, and in cycling you're dealing with a fixed frame object, like the wheel is a certain diameter, and so for power meters for cycling, for me to pull 400 watts is actually going to be the same as Dom to pull 400 watts. Like those watts correlate to the actual bike itself and how quickly you're turning the wheel and the physics of it. For, I guess, and it's probably why it's taken so long for run power to evolve, is that ultimately it is based off algorithms, and there's a few different ways to calculate those algorithms. The one that I sort of trust the most is the Stride power meters, which are a foot pod base, so they strap, like it just clips onto your laces, and they actually have like an inbuilt accelerometer, they're literally measuring the movement of your foot. And so it's a much more accurate indicator for your output when you also enter in inputs like what you weigh and how tall you are. But they've tested that over so many runners now and refined that algorithm that it's actually really quite accurate when it comes to undulating terrain, technical terrain, running uphill, hiking. They've really improved the hiking sort of algorithm as well. So the foot pod based power is definitely the sort of the one that's been tested most rigorously and correlates the best with like force plate, treadmill analysis and all of those sorts of things, and threshold and VO2 testing in the lab. There's a lot of wrist-based power coming out now, so a lot of the watch manufacturers are wanting to jump on board with this technology, and there's a few different iterations of that, and they do use quite different algorithms. So some of them, like Polar, tend to run quite high. They're sort of like average power seems to be considerably higher to sort of a stride pod. The one that I've started playing around with a lot more is Coros. Their wrist-based power is actually really quite well correlated to stride. I still haven't tested it as much as I want to on super technical kind of stuff, but for road running now, I'm pretty comfortable just wearing my Coros and not charging my foot pod. The downside of the foot pod is it doesn't love being submerged in rivers.
I can imagine.
Found that out the hard way. So like for the super long stuff, you know, like UTA course where you've got a few river crossings, or like the event that I was sort of race directing at, there's I think 14 river crossings. So it's pretty annoying to have to take something off your foot on and off repeatedly. So wrist-based power is like the ultimate evolution. But I guess we get a lot more metrics out of the foot pod in terms of your actual running form. And that's kind of the other aspect of the data that I look at. It's not just necessarily your power output, it's also what your ground contact time's doing and your leg spring stiffness and a bunch of those other metrics that give us a bit more feedback on how you're actually holding form over the duration of a distance.
Yeah. And I know in cycling, like it's like power to weight is like the main sort of ratio, because bigger people are going to generate more power like naturally.
And it's the same for running. So you will convert that to sort of watts per kig basically. And that is more so for me, like my threshold power is going to be 220 watts, whereas for, you know, another female that weighs a different amount to me, that has been running at different intensities for the last 90 days and is at a different phase of training, their threshold's going to be completely different. But watts per kig is the more equivalent sort of metric that you can sort of apply. Okay.
So it's like, it's the same, I guess, then in cycling, how you kind of break it down. And I was thinking like other metrics, another common one is like blood lactates, which is pretty hard to do, but it's probably, I don't know, the most